then I went to source. Now that was the bliss, being wrapped in love, floating in a sea of love, being a point, I guess, of consciousness, because I didn't feel my hands or my toes or anything, floating in a sea of love with all these other souls. They're parts of you. They weren't strangers, they're aspects of yourself, floating in a sea of love. And then
I'm here today with Lura Ketchledge, who is an author and near-death experiencer. Lura has garnered much acclaim, appearing on CBS, ABC, Fox, and NBC News, and she is here to share her story with us today. I am very blessed and privileged to have you as my guest, Lura. Thank you so much for joining me.
well, thank you, Tia. I'm really thrilled to be part of the team today. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, me too. So take me back to what happened. You had this amazing experience and it changed your life.
Well, Tia, if you can imagine, 1979 it was over 45 years ago. There was no internet. There was no public discussion about near-death experience. And that kind of thing got lumped into, if you looked for Bigfoot and believed in UFOs, anything paranormal or out of the ordinary that is not easy to explain, you would be viewed as a wackadoo. So it's nobody really would want to go in the library and go into that section of the paranormal and get anything out, because there was such a stigma to it. So I'm a normal 19-year-old girl. Okay, I was flunking out of junior college, had a couple of boyfriends, I was working in a nightclub, I was doing all the things a young person does when they're just getting into life. I had my first apartment, my first car. There were a lot of firsts, and I was loving life. So the last thing I was really thinking about that day, that spring day in 1979, was my death. It started out a beautiful, picturesque day in Centerville, Virginia. I went riding at a stable that I'd gone to quite often as a younger teen. I'm not a great rider, but I'm pretty good. I went on later on to have horses and horse farms, so I sort of knew what I was doing, but I got on a horse above my ability, I have to say. But I thought the horse looked really cool and sleek, and I wanted to ride that horse. So I'm out in the field and I'm riding a horse and I'm having a great time, got off, walked around. It was kind of getting a little bit later. I knew I had to get back. My hour and a half was up. So I joined two other guys on the trail, strangers, very nice young men. They seemed old to me because maybe they were 30. I remember thinking that. So we decided to have the bright idea to race back to the barn. Not my best idea. So my horse managed to find probably the only gopher hole in the field. And my horse stumbled, and I knew something bad was going to happen. You know, that feeling of, you just know you're going to get clobbered. You weren't expecting, but you know it's going to happen. So what happened was, the horse started to stumble. I was going at a very high rate of speed. I saw to the right of me, there was a dip in the field, a little gully with rocks, and that's where I was heading. And but I never hit the ground. I went to the right, maybe 12 inches, and then I left my body. And I went into this velvet black pit tunnel, whatever you call it, at a very high rate of speed. And I knew that I was leaving my life. I knew this, it was over, you know, like that feeling you really know when you're just about to die. So it felt terrible because I wasn't ready. It was so abrupt. It was like, you know, just think about it. You're in the middle of a sound sleep in your warm, cozy bed. This is how I explain it to people. It's in the middle of the night and somebody drops you into the Atlantic Ocean from Denver, Colorado. That's how it felt, so abrupt, leaving physical reality, leaving my body, leaving my life, and there was no pain. It wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cold. I felt wonderful. I knew I'd gotten clobbered. I knew that that was it, you know, that the ground was coming and there was, it was unavoidable, and I was surprised I wasn't in agony. And that's when I really knew I was dead. There's quite a few things that happened in this experience that are hard to articulate, so I'm just going to kind of do the best I can, if that's all right. When you die unexpected, unprepared, I think it's different than when you're ailing and when you're ready to let go. You're taking with you all the anguish that you can muster about and all the grief. It's so much more intense. Also, your vision is much clearer. It's like there's colors that you've never been able to see before. Your vision's clear, your hearing's clear, your mind is more acute. You're even knowing that you're thinking and it feels louder in your thoughts, like a volume is turned up. It's just more intense. I was able to meet up with my grandfather, and he had died in 1972. And I have to watch when I explain this because I cry easy about this. Is one of the few subjects I cry real easy about, so I'm not gonna do that today. My grandfather was there to greet me, and he didn't have cancer anymore, and he wasn't sick and ailing, and he was glad to see me. And my grandfather had the brightest blue eyes in life, you know, like Paul Newman, one of these, you know, he had the most electric blue eyes, even though his body was white. And he had still very large hands. You know, when a child holds a grandparent's hand, all adults feel like they have big hands. But his hands were still big, even in my adult. And I was so glad to see him. You know, it was so beautiful to see him. And the nice thing this is the takeout of all this. The love does not disconnect when someone dies, and time is not like all this time for him didn't pass. There is no time, if that makes sense. So I got to see my grandfather. I got to talk to my grandfather, confide in him. And some of this conversation is just too personal. I'm not going to share it with anybody, but you know, just to know he's all right was worth the fall, was worth the accident. Having a life review that everyone says you have, you feel the actions that you've had on other people, you get their point of view. It wasn't pleasant. I wasn't a bad person, but I was your inconsiderate teenager. Let me put it that way. And, you know, when you're a teenager, you know everything. And believe me, you don't. So you have a life review, which is great, which everybody talks about. So I'm not going to go into that. Nothing really that profound happened. I rescued a few animals. That was my good deed, but it wasn't a judgment. Like, you know, you're not sit there and go, oh, you were mean to Sally and Karen and Ken, and this is how they felt. It's not like that. It's not a punishment. It's a realization, and you're your own worst critic. So you do have that classic life review, but not like, you know, I thought. Now, something I want to say, and I don't want to offend people because I've gotten some really strong emails. In my experience, there is no organized religion that's man-made. I didn't have an epiphany. I didn't see Moses. I didn't see Jesus. There is a morality that is beyond human comprehension of goodness and kindness and things that have value. But there isn't, I did not have a real religious epiphany at all. I had a spiritual awakening, which was very different. So as I was having this near-death experience, I'm letting go of being a Presbyterian. I had my grandfather, well, my other grandfather was a minister, and I was sang in the church choir, and I was, oh my God, I was bottle fed on the church. but I never got the indoctrination most people did. I was always open-minded, and I always thought a little different, like, gosh, could this be organized religion, be there to control people? Answer, yeah, pretty much. It's made by men, but it does have a good message. But I didn't have the religious epiphany. I was able to go out of body through the dark tunnel, see my grandfather. There were like all these little milestones, and every layer after physical reality, like, so this is the core here, this is the outer core. Every time you go closer inwards towards source, it's more thought reactive, shall we say. Sometimes I'm just not a good explainer because, Tia, I mean, it's hard to articulate the experience. There's just more feeling, there's more emotion. You're just so, it's intense. Like when you love, when you're grateful. It's just more. There's no filter, there's no breaks. You just feel it. So that life review wasn't pleasant. Seeing my grandfather was going inward. I was taken or guided, now not by my grandfather. There were other guides around me, but I couldn't comprehend who they were, or I couldn't bring back that information. And I went to this great chamber. And I remember looking back, and it looked like the Earth from a distance, like planet Earth. And I thought, I hate heights, and I don't feel scared about this. There was no floor. I think I had my physical body like a complete copy of it. I had the sensation of fingers and toes and the head and, that sort of thing. I didn't think I was a point of consciousness, but I went into this great hall, and on the right, there were like a lineup of souls. On the left, there were a lineup. On the right, it was all male, and it was all female on the other. And there was, like at least 50, 75 on each. Okay. And I was getting information from my guides, and this is my life. These were my, I really don't like reincarnation. Okay. But on the right, I couldn't imagine being a male. All my past lives on the right as a male, all my past lives as a female. So I'm a fairly curious person. So I went in to touch one of them because I couldn't stop myself. It's like you go to the store, you don't touch anything on the rack. I had to touch. And I saw a male, and I thought, oh, no way, no way. And he was all white, and I didn't have a connection to him. Then I went on the other side, and then I touched, and I saw female. And I don't know how this worked, but they were trying to show me something. And it looked like a mean lunch lady I had when I was like in grammar school. Anyways, I wasn't any beauty. Okay. So, I'm in this great hall. It's more intense than I can express. There's a lineup of men, there's a lineup of women. These were your past incarnations, and I was like, they come together. I don't know why. I don't have all the answers. I'm 19 years old, and this is blowing my mind apart, splitting my brain apart. And then there was just this swoosh, and I wasn't there. 1 minute you're there, 1 minute you're not there, and almost like an acceleration, and I'm going inward, and I'm going through layers, and you perceive it as traveling. It's not I'm not good at articulating it. Then I went to source. Now that was the bliss, being wrapped in love, floating in a sea of love, being a point, I guess, of consciousness, because I didn't feel my hands or my toes or anything, floating in a sea of love with all these other souls. They're parts of you. They weren't strangers. They're aspects of yourself, floating in a sea of love. And then you know, there is a sun. It's like almost like clouds, but it's not quite clouds. It's the only thing I can say that's closest to it. Okay. Um, it was absolute bliss. And the strange thing is, I didn't want for anything. I wasn't in anguish over my death. I wasn't in anguish about anything. It was being wrapped in a blanket of love and floating, and it was just wonderful. There was music floating through the area in random waves, if that makes any sense. Beauty, indescribable, love indescribable, 10 times more than I can express. So I don't want to drag this out. Didn't last that long. As I was coming back towards physical reality, towards my body, it's like I stopped at this place, and I think it was very thought responsive because it was a beach, which I love the beach. I grew up at a beach. There were these rocks or cliffs off in the distance, and there was windows, and I had the feeling, but I didn't see anybody, that people lived here or resided, or this is where you can, one of your consensus realities where souls can end up if they want to. And I just thought about religion. I thought, what about the tree of life? Then all of a sudden I look, and there's this pine tree coming up from the foot of the ocean, you know, where the waves meet the shore, right in the middle. And I knew that I had created or thought of it. And the definition to the bark was like, it was like a luminous white, and parts of it were this beautiful mossy color green. And it was like, blew my mind. And then this swish backwards, you know, and I was coming back. I'm going to shorten the story up because I can get lost in these steps. Coming backwards, and there was my grandfather, and then I had to return the anguish. All of the human foibles came back to me. I mean, and I was in a state of anguish, shock, all the awful emotions, just and grief, and it was all wrapped up into one. And there was my grandfather, and I'm in this mauve colored layer or dimension, and I'm not wanting to go. I want to go back to where I was. I want to, you know, I was right, you know, I didn't, you don't want to come back. It's not. And then there was a and I'm in the field in Centerville, Virginia. I'm back. And my first thought, I'm looking around the field, and I just said to myself, and I think I muttered it out loud, this is not reality. And there was a car down there to take me to the hospital. No ambulance, but a car. And the two men that I'd been riding with, I don't know where their horses are, but they were really concerned. And the owner of the stable was out, and, you know, I guess they had resuscitated me somehow. And I'm just like feeling not the love, not gratitude. Like I didn't even thank these people. I was angry they interrupted me. They brought me back, and they didn't have the right to do that. And I was one pissed off gal. But I had good enough manners not to, like, you know, say anything profane. But I was thinking it. And I got into the car to go to the hospital. I passed out unconscious again. Nothing happened. Got to the hospital. My mom was there. The doctors were there. I got the x-rays. I had broken nose and finger, and I don't think there was a part of me that wasn't bruised. But Tia, it was awful. And I talked to everybody who's had me on shows. You know, I tried to tell the doctor about this, and he just stopped disconcerted and asked me what drugs I was taking. And I started getting dismissed and shamed by him and the staff, and they were looking at me like, oh God, you know, you're high, you did this to yourself. Like all their compassion and concern just went out the window. The doctor was pretty mean to me after that. And my mom was an RN, and she said, listen, my daughter has a head injury. Maybe she had a dream, you know, she needs to be admitted. And the doctor was like, we don't coddle drug users. And my mom said, listen, this kid doesn't use drugs. She's a head injury. And they said, well, you're an RN, you take her home and observe her. And if you think that she's getting any bleeding on the brain, bring her back in. So I was like wanting to walk out of there. My mom and I were like, we were in, I think Mirrorfield, driving home to my mother's house because I had my own apartment. And I thought, oh my God, I've got to go back and tell my, I got to talk to my grandfather. I started getting out of the, at a traffic stop. I started to get out of the car in the middle of a traffic stop. I was not grounded back to physical reality for a good 12 hours. But that was my near-death experience. And that day, my whole life turned upside down and my core beliefs shifted.
When you were in your experience and you said you were coming back to the physical reality, were you given a choice if you wanted to stay or go back?
No, no, I wasn't. I would have chosen different. I'm glad I came back, but no, I don't, no, I really, I knew it was going to be, I was told it was going to be really hard. My life was going to be a real hard one. And I wasn't keen on that because I was pretty much a sissy. I don't like difficult things.
When you were there, did it feel like a dream, like your mom was talking about maybe you had a dream, or did it feel more real than this reality?
Oh, it wasn't any dream. The thing about going out of body is that there's such an intensity of your senses, your thoughts. You can think so much clearer. You can see, you can hear clearer, brighter, more vivid. Yeah. And I never like dropped acid or anything like or any of those type of drugs that I would have had some sort of hallucination. I drank too much soda. That was about it.
So there was no doubt in your mind that this was a true experience. You didn't question it later.
I went to I did question. I went into a therapist afterwards because I wanted to talk about it. And I was pretty shaken up because, I was 19 and, it's sort of like you grow up in the 60s, the 70s. I mean, life was very, very different. There wasn't a lot of questioning about society or religion or anything. So I went to a therapist and she just looked at me and she said, "Are we having a pity party because you broke your nose?" And I was like, "I'm not having a pity party. I think I just let go of my religion. I'm a little confused. I'd like to talk about it." I was so shamed by her. I froze up. I mean, just like, I just thought, oh my God, somebody's going to think I'm just either vain or I'm a wackadoo. And yeah, I completely shut down emotionally.
It's like what we talked about before the meeting. I think people weren't open, This is kind of a new subject, even though Dr. Moody came up with the term near death experience in the 70s. You're talking just 4 years later. That's not very much time for that.
The isolation that I felt those 12 hours after the accident, I felt so disconnected from society. I felt so alone. I felt anguish. Um, I had nobody to talk to, and I desperately wanted to talk to somebody. You know, uh, I didn't get up the courage to talk to anybody, but I talked to my grandmother and I told her everything about my grandfather coming when I was, I guess, like 23, and she took a lot of comfort in it. And then we had a lot of discussions. And then she told me her mother was able to, you know, um, had experiences. And then one of my uncles, I wish somebody told me sooner.
But you're right, people didn't talk about that. It was
Oh,
considered
no.
very woo-woo, that was taboo. And it still kind of is, but it's changing a little bit. So
Yeah.
your life changed completely after this experience. Like you said, you lost your religion, you had a whole shift in reality. You were a kind of, typical teenager. What
Mhm.
happened, the day after your experience? Like, how did your life go on after this? How did it change you?
My core values shifted. I really let go of organized religion. That was it. After that day, I believed that Organized religion is made by human beings, well-meaning human beings, maybe with some spirituality, but what I don't like about core religion, some of these hardcore religions, is they're always trying to control people, and women always come out at get the bad end of the stick, and I just realized that there is a logic and an order that I wasn't able to comprehend, or there long enough to comprehend how things worked on the other side. But I had a burning curiosity after that. I want to know where I'm going when I die. I want to know the rules of the road. I want to be prepared. If there was two signs, let's say I died tomorrow, and there was one sign that said lecture on heaven, the other one said heaven, I take the lecture first. I want to know how things work. It's my personality. So then things happen, the after effects of near-death experience are multi-layered. You first, if you've got any intelligence, you just really try to think it through and realize, there's just a shift in your core values, and that's okay. It's okay to let go of organized religion. It's okay to have your values shift. And then there's the after effects that, people come back sometimes with a sensitivity or an ability, and that's hard to process. But after years, it gets easier. Now, I did not talk about my near-death experience till I was over 50. So that's 30 years of bottling it up. A long time. After 50, you lose the embarrassment gene, you as long as you leave the house and you've brushed your teeth, your clothes are clean, you're good to go. You lose the embarrassment gene, and you just kind of, this is who I am. And I was writing some books, and I thought, I'm going to have a little fun with this, because I don't want to be all that serious about it. And I have some self-deprecating humor. I wish I was psychic. I'd be in Vegas making money, and we wouldn't be talking. I get the lotto numbers. It just doesn't work that way. I wish it did.
So you did come back with an ability then, a special gift?
I don't know if it was a gift. I think most people, if they had it, they want to give the gift back. No, from time to time, I've had paranormal encounters, um, or visitations, or whatever you want to call it. All of these things started happening, after I was 19. And it was just sort of like in my head. And my way of getting it out was to write novels and put it in for my characters, and just let it all out. And it was very cathartic to write. And I got a lot of clues. I've had 45 years of random clues into the afterlife. Now, when I want it to happen, it never does. When I have a certain question, I'm usually pretty unsuccessful, but I've had enough experiences to get a general idea of how the afterlife works. Plus, I was fortunate enough to go to a good therapist when I was 25. I moved to New York City. Everybody does therapy, in New York City. And I went to a therapist, and I told her about it, and she was excellent. I said, I don't want to read all this mumbo jumbo and call 1-800 numbers and talk to a psychic, or anything. She said, read Robert Monroe's books. He's a good explainer. Check out the Monroe Institute. So I read Robert Monroe's books about out-of-body experience, near-death experience, and I went, oh gosh, oh, thank you, Jesus. I really needed that. He explained it very well, and I didn't have to go looking for quote answers. It was more of a scientific study. The Monroe Institute is world renowned, and it's not a commercial venture. It's a nonprofit. So that's what was my lifeline at 25, and I grabbed it.
In your near-death experience, you saw these beings that were your past lives. Is
Yeah.
that where you are going to go? Like was it actual entities, or was it like empty bodies? How did that work?
I know, it kind of blows my mind. let me just get, this is what I think, this is my hypothesis, and gee, I'm probably wrong, but I got a pretty strong indication of all the 45 years of clues. This is what I think. When a soul comes into physical reality, okay, I really believe that it fractures into different personalities at different times in history. And you enter, you could be born in the 1700s. You could be born next week. You could born, the soul fractures into different personalities and has different lives. I don't like reincarnation, to tell you the truth. And you live this life and then you eventually die. And I think all the aspects of yourself sort of gather or are gathered. I think a lot of them get caught in belief systems and it takes a long time to work out. But I think eventually you end up back at source, all the pieces of you, parts of you, your personalities. To think that I had a different life as a male, it creeps me out. I'm a girly girl, but it's probably true. And, I'm guessing it's because you have to learn so much in physical reality. It's an exquisite learning school. It's a school, I guess. Was this being shown to me in a certain way in my near-death experience so I could comprehend it? I'm probably yeah, because I think that my beliefs now are so much more advanced. I wouldn't have understood it at 19. Okay. But when I got to source and I was floating in that sea of love and there seemed to be other souls around me, I think that was my source. And I think the other souls around me were probably past life, future life personalities. I don't know. I'm not a good explainer of this. It just didn't feel foreign. It felt really comforting. The idea that, we live these lives. I don't want to be 13 and go through braces again. Or I don't want to be like, destitute and living in some weird cult or something. But think about this. If you have a lot of past lives, if this is the truth, if I'm right, if this is the truth, and we've all lived many lives, we've been the victim, we've been the villain, we've been the hero, we've had roles where we were helpers, we were people we could have been Nazis. You don't know. If you've had all of these roles, you'd have to play a different part in different aspects of time, like living in the 1600s of being ignorant or uneducated, or maybe you're a theologian and you're brilliant. But if you have all of these past lives, what a better tool to learn and get information and bring that back to source. If you've had multiple lives and multiple lessons, isn't that an exquisite teaching tool?
I would say so. That makes sense.
It's my guesstimate. I could be wrong.
You said you have 45 years of tips about how the afterlife is,
Hint.
how it works.
Yeah.
Can you share how it works with us? Is there a process to it?
Well, I write it out in my books. Now, I'm not pushing my books, but I'm a better explainer when I take a character and go through it and this stuff. But I've talked to other people like me because I have my own podcast now about near-death experience. So it's kind of this way. I've got a general idea how things work. You come into this world and you learn all these lessons and you leave. And when you die, you don't automatically become brilliant. You don't automatically, get all the secrets of the universe. That's a disappointment. I really, like to be smarter. I think I've gone to source. That's as far as I could go. And I don't think too many people have been that far out in, past source. I don't know. Never heard of anybody. But right from physical reality, most people get caught up until William Buhlman's a beautiful explainer about consensus realities. You know how a lot of people have died and they've met up with loved ones, okay? And they seem to go off into like a perfect copy of physical reality, but minus taxes. You don't have taxes when you're dead. You don't have disease. You're not paying a mortgage payment. These things are nice. You don't have the stresses. But I think we go into these like little copies that are very comfortable for the transition. And I don't know, I think it takes some people a long time to realize there's something past that. I think they get stuck into different religions, beliefs, cultures, things like that. But, the mind-blowing thing is most, okay, so we're in physical reality. In this same space, there's like, I guess, what I would call inner dimensions. You know how vast the universe is. It's ginormous. It's incomprehensible to us. That's how big or bigger non-physical reality is. So we're going to spend most of existence in non-physical. We're here for a real short ride. It's sort of like you're taking this ride in an amusement park, like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, and we're going through physical reality. It's over fast, man. It's over really fast. But most of the existence is going to be in non-physical. And yeah, I'm older now. I'm going to be 65. I'm glad this happened to me and that I got all these hints. I just wish I had gotten more information instead of had to think a lot.
Gotten more information while you were there?
Yeah, I would have liked the cheat sheet, Cliff notes, please show me, just give me a little bio how this thing works instead of having to figure it out. Like, I was sick at one time. My big struggle has been autoimmune disease and seriously ill and in and out of hospitals and stuff. And my knowledge didn't make it any easier. It was horrible and it was what it was, but I'm better now. But I had intervention. I had help while I was sick. I nearly died at one time and I was bleeding internally, didn't know it. My grandfather came to me, just walked into my room out of thin air, had been dead a long time, sat down on my bed, put his hand over my abdomen, and he said, "Your spleen." And then he dissolved. So I had no idea where your spleen was. Quite honestly, I didn't know if it was like tonsils or what. So I went to a doctor and said, "You know what? I don't want to have my spleen out. I'm going to die." And I told him the truth. And he says, he said, "I've known you a long time." He said, I know you're a pretty together gal. And I'm going to write you an order for splenectomy because I've heard some things over the years and I believe you. Went in for the splenectomy and I felt like when I woke up, nobody did me a favor. It was horrid. But my spleen had been hemorrhaging and imploding inward. And I had a few days or a few hours. I would have died if I hadn't had that. So I've had help from the other side. And let me say it in another way. Maybe this will help. Okay, physical reality's here and non-physical's here, and most people can't see non-physical. But when you've had a near-death experience, there's sort of a merger and overlapping that happens, and that's how you get clues or you get communications or you see things. But it's only for a few seconds or a few minutes. Nobody gives you a roadmap. But I do believe that there's some sort of overlapping, like you're not fully have come back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing.
I was going to ask you if you felt like maybe a portal or a channel had opened for you because of your experience.
Oh, yeah.
Because you had been to that side. And so
Oh, yeah.
a lot of people discuss how it's more of not a place, but a vibration. Did you kind of get that feeling as well?
No, it's a place, but you go through a vibrational state. You feel like it's like your body's spazzing. I don't know what else to call it. I have a little fun with it because, I hear sometimes my interviews and I thought, gee, if I didn't know me and this hadn't happened, boy, oh my God, that girl sounds crazy. And it sounds weird, But if if it hasn't happened to you, it's a belief. You know, you believe that there's a continuation of existence. I know because it's a known fact for me. So you look, when you've seen it, you've experienced it, you know that there's a continuation of existence. It's like, aha, well, now I can be myself, because what have I got to lose? And like my father was like, I said, do you want me to help prepare you? Because he was dying, and tell you how things work. Nope, don't believe in it. I don't want to hear it. I don't, it's upsetting. I know your mother listened to it, but I don't want to. So my dad was a character, and I took care of him for 5 years until he died. And he didn't want any prep, because when you're dead, you're dead. I've never, my dad was a minister, but I never really believed. Well, I had a shared death experience with him, and I didn't want to say, oh, I love you and all that stuff. I just wanted to say, I told you so. I told you so, you know. But a shared death experience was a beautiful thing that I had with him. It's still, I have a lot of grief concerning him. It was a terrible thing to lose him, but I know he's okay. And there's a lot of comfort in that. When you know that there's a continuation of existence, it's like, well, that's one less thing to worry about.
Shared death experiences are not
Yeah.
nearly as widely talked about as near-death experiences. What is the difference?
Well, first of all, I didn't know it could happen, because I don't read about psychic phenomena or watch the movies or really listen to too many other podcasts or anything, because I'm busy living now. I figure I'll there's a couple of authors that I really follow closely that I totally believe in, like William Buhlman. I've taken his courses, or people, the Monroe Institute. I've read their books, and I kind of take that pretty much verbatim. But the shared death experience, I hadn't thought could happen. Would you like me to tell you about what happened with my
Yes,
dad?
yes, please do.
Okay, my mother had died of cancer, and I took care of her for 10 months. Heartbreaking. And then I took care of my dad, and we got very close. And you know, all the little old ladies in the neighborhood were after him once there's a widower. It's so funny. I used to buy him clothes and buy him flowers, and take him on his dates, drive him, and then sit like 3 tables away and read a book while he was on his dates with his gal pals. It was so cute. But he had a very bad week, the last week of his life, and I knew he was dying, and I'd been up all night with hospice at my home. I was exhausted. I mean, it was like, I don't know, 5 in the morning. I had to get some sleep. He was in the chain stoke breathing. He was going to expire soon, but I had to get some sleep. So I went to bed, and it's just like, if I can just close my eyes for 20 minutes, I'll get back up. Well, what had happened was, I literally left my body, and I felt that sensation, just this freeing, this clicking out of body. It was great. It's like a rush. It feels good. And all of a sudden, I'm with him, and I'm like, well, he's downstairs, and we're in a car driving. Oh my God. You know, this is really happening. He's really in the dying process. I knew. It was all in black and white, no color. Dad and I are in a car, and it was the car my grandparents had given my parents in 1964. We were in that car. I hadn't thought about that car in 30 years. So we're in the car, we're driving. I'm looking over at Dad. He's looking younger, a lot younger, like, 30s, crew cut. I hadn't seen that crew cut since the 60s. Anyways, so we're in this car, and I'm just going with the flow. And then we stop, and he goes over, and it's still in black and white, and I'm with him, and I'm thinking, I told you so. I told you there was a, existence. I was really kind of smug. I was thinking, I told you so. So he takes this like a book, but without a cover, like minded, and he said, I'm canceling my life. I said, oh no, don't do that, not yet. He was like ripping it, letting go. And then all of a sudden, I'm swoosh back. I'm sitting up, and I run downstairs, and he had just went this horrible gasp before he died. And then he died, and I kissed him, and it was very emotional. But that was a gift he gave to me. You know, I went out of body, I was with him, I shared his death. He was fine about it. I didn't know that could happen. I just didn't know that could happen. It was a mind-blowing experience. And it was, you know, I'm just saying it like, oh, this happened. Going through, it's a different thing. You are pretty emotional and pretty invested in that moment.
And you said he gave you that gift. I think that is the most beautiful gift that you can receive from your loved one who's
Yeah.
passing.
And he was showing me he's okay. And this is the guy that didn't want to hear about it. I mean, he totally believed me because like I knew when my aunt died, I called the house and he knew he'd been a little creeped out at some of my experiences over the years. But yeah, this was him saying, I love you. So I'm very glad about that.
And just the fact that you know he's okay now. I mean, you've been to the other side,
Yeah, yeah,
but that he thought enough about you to
yeah.
share that moment.
I think you can disconnect, like people that are in coma and they're lingering, I think they can disconnect and be out of their body and they're just waiting to fully let go, but they've already left.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. Even like when someone's on life support,
Mhm.
they can leave actually before their body is completely shut down. Their bodies can be kept
Yeah.
alive on life support. And I know that from my husband's death because that's when I had my shared death with him. He was on life support, but then, you know, his body didn't die for 2 days. So I understand that and I agree 100% with that. Um,
Right.
Did you have you had any visitations? You saw your grandpa, he came, you had the shared death with your dad. Do you continue to have visitations with your
Oh yeah, I mean, this has happened, gone on for years. Like when my Aunt Evelyn died, she came to me and I got up and I just ran out of the room like like a mental patient screaming for her life because I was really young. It wouldn't have been that long since my near-death experience. So I call up my sister the next day, somebody died in the family. Who was it? Who was it? I was all upset. And she said, well, Evelyn finally passed. And I was like, oh God, I was so mean to her. I felt bad about it. She was the kindest, sweetest person in the world. And I got up and ran away from her. So, you know, sorry. Um, Things like that have happened to me over the years, but you know, it's random. I don't think anybody can tap into the other side. I mean, I am like the hardest person on like psychics. I've met a few that I think were spot on. Nobody's got this ability that they can, you know, see your dead Aunt Sally where she hid the silver. You know, it just doesn't happen like that.
something's been weighing on my mind about when you talked about you woke up and you first thing you thought was or said was this is not reality. So what is this? Is this like a dream?
No, I think physical reality, that where we are in the United States or whatever, it is as real as real. But we're all like projecting our souls into this incarnation or whatever, and we're living our lives, and it's very real. But it's just a big old school that with mandatory attendance. That's the only way I can conceive it because there's so many horrible things. I mean, we've got some wars going on. People are just awful to each other, murdering each other, and it's such a brutal experience, this world. I mean, it's wonderful, but it's not all puppies and kittens and rainbows. It's pretty tough gig. And luckily, when you're in the next world, it's a little less tough. But I think there's just a lot of lessons we have to learn, for some reason. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I wish I did. Got a general idea, what happens. But, you know, a lot of near-death experiencers like myself that I've contacted and networked with, we all have this urgency to live the best possible life
Mm-hmm.
right here, right now. There is no rush to get to the other world, and I am not a big believer in suicide unless you're in terrible pain and it's a better thing. You are really I feel a responsibility to live a good life, to write my books and leave a legacy, and I explain the whole, all my hypotheses and experiences. I just got them out. I had to write about it, do something. This is not what I expected to be my life's journey, okay? I thought I'd be a housewife in Jersey with a bunch of kids and grandkids and just nagging the hell out of my husband in the retirement, you know? But I've had a very different life. I got ill with autoimmune disease and had like 15 really brutal years in and out of hospitals. Couldn't have done it if I didn't have that core shift in values to hang on to. And still I had trouble. I got better when I shouldn't have. You know, I shouldn't be here. So either God has a sense of humor or I have a purpose. I don't know which.
Well, do you think that you had your near-death experience to kind of help you get through this tough life?
Possibly, but I also think it was a combination, sort of like the perfect storm. My great grandmother, Kate Marston, had the gift, they said. I find this out as an adult, not as an, she could heal people. People that were ailing came to her. She was a blacksmith's wife and is just a lovely person. And she had the ability, she would know when someone has died before she got the call. She had tremendous psychic abilities. I found out later, and my uncle did, and finally got to talk to him in my 30s about it. And he was kind of like me with these things without a near-death experience, and we had a lot of discussions about it. So I don't know, really. I think I had some sort of genetic predisposition, and the fact that I had this terrible accident kind of collided and was like the perfect storm. That's what I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm.
I've had, out of curiosity, you know, I do have fun with this, you know, I do have a sense of humor. I'm a big goof. I'm not that serious of a human being or, you know, or cryptic or anything. But I did a radio show, and then all of these local paranormal investigation teams wanted to debunk me. And I said, okay, bring it on. They looked under my house for recording stuff, all kinds of stuff, and they just cut off my electricity. And anyways, 5 teams, independent of each other, all came to my farm in Kentucky, all had Class A EVPs and all these positive findings. They got stuff on video that they'd never seen at somebody else's house. And I was like, I was kind of enjoying it, having a good time during it. I even had a seance one time at my house, and I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. I let these strangers in my house. I felt so stupid because I just am not one of these people that, you know. So, but we really had some pretty positive findings. And when I saw the videos, you know, of like these orbs coming by me, and I go into another room and they follow me and come to the other room, that was pretty cool. So I took some of those findings and I got on My Ghost Story 10 years ago, and My Ghost Story caught on camera and presented the paranormal evidence. That was fun. I did Paranormal Night-Shift. That was fun. Got to go to Hollywood. That was interesting. And then some of the producers like asked me, well, can you do this? And can you contact? And I said, you know what? I can't contact somebody. When these things happen, they're random. They're all different and they're just weird. So, yeah. But it was interesting to have all of this stuff that, you know, was video and audio. One was really cool. Jeff Sanford was a paranormal investigator, great credentials. He came to, and we had this big investigation and nothing happened. We had a birthday cake for his wife and, you know, just kind of had a good time. He plays back some of the recordings, and he had gone in my room and posed a question. Are there any children here? And he could hear a clear, audible male voice say, you have to look. And my mother said to me, oh my God, that sounds just like my late brother. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Wow, that is really cool.
Yeah.
Is this available for people to access the shows and the things that you've been a part of?
Well, if you go to luraketch.com, it gives you links to like my YouTube channels and stuff like that. So I have some of the stuff up, and I have done like paranormal stories that I did a painting with my encounters, and I put that up there just, you know, kind of, I figured there's other people like me who would kind of feel good to hear somebody have a similar experience. I sure wish I had somebody to talk to in my 20s. I did have a therapist, but I had a lot of, it was hard to digest. I mean, I was a young woman, um, least likely to believe in anything paranormal, least likely to have any type of religious epiphany or spiritual awakening. It just wasn't in my DNA.
Hmm.
Wow, things changed.
And would your YouTube channel be the best way to reach out to?
Well, yeah, luraketch.com, luraketch.com. It's got links to my books. In my books, I make them, they're like a paranormal romance mystery. You know, there's always a good murder mystery and a love story and good stuff like that. But I put in true paranormal events in my life into my fictional books, and then I try to explain it as best I can because, you know, we're talking and stuff, but I could never articulate some of these experiences without putting you to sleep.
Well, I think that you've done a really great job of taking some very serious topics and events and making fun with them, not fun of them, but with them, with your videos, your paranormal, and you know, just the way that you're living your life is a very beautiful experience and a good
You're
way to
very,
show.
very kind. I just wanted to tell you one thing after my what I really took out of this whole experience, the NDE and everything, was that everything you do when I have my life review matters. Being kind to people really is big, being kind to people and animals. So basically, you know, I am no saint. I've got a potty mouth. I mean, I am just like no saint. But what I make is a very conscious effort is never to take out my bad mood on somebody or try to bring them down. The worst thing you can do in this life is interfere or interrupt someone else's destiny. That was actually explained to me. Think of the spouse that continually berates their partner or is physically abusive, and you're really interrupting that person's destiny and growth. That's huge on the other side. That's a huge no-no. Uh, just, you know, try to minimize the carnage in your life. That's all I ever say.
Is there a punishment for things like that?
It's not a punishment, but okay, let's say, I've said this before on other shows. Let's say you work for a company, Tia, and you know, you work for a company and they're making a very bad medication or product. And you want to keep your job and you're getting a good bonus, but you know, you don't say anything because you want to keep that bonus and that job. But you know that that product or that medication, it's going to hurt an innocent person. And everybody gets in this group in the company and they're doing it for the money. And you hurt that innocent person. Let's say it's a young boy and he's never going to accomplish all the things he could have because he got hurt or sick from that product. You're going to, when you have your life review, you're going to feel all the disappointment and damage that his parents felt, the anguish at seeing their kids sick. You're going to see the missed opportunities of this person that you interrupted their destiny by your inaction. You're going to feel their hurt from their point of view. You're going to see the consequences of your gross indifference to their humanity. Now, if that's not hell, I don't know what it is, but it's not in the perspective of a punishment. It's a more of an understanding. So these people that think they've gotten away, these big corporations, they think they've gotten away with something. Let's say they poisoned a town. Those CEOs and those people that were complicit, they're going to feel all of their inaction or actions when they have their life review. Well, if that doesn't, isn't that, if that's not sobering, makes you want to be a Girl Scout, I don't know what does.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, this has been an honor for me, Laura. If you had one message that you wanted people to take away from this conversation today, what would that be?
It's okay to talk about your near-death experience. If you tell a sibling or a boyfriend and they go, well, oh, you're crazy, or that's weird, or, blah, blah, blah. Let them say that. In the long run, it really doesn't matter. You've got to own your own truth. I finally, after 50, was able to speak my own truth. And it's sort of like, maybe I'm flying the freak flag, but I'm flying it proud. And I have a sense of humor about it. And I have a little self-deprecating humor. It's very isolating to have a paranormal experience or a near-death experience because you feel so alone afterwards. It's such a letdown to come back and then try to grapple with it. So, listen to some videos. You're not alone. They're resuscitating people in record numbers now because of modern medicine. That's why, there's so much discussion about it because so many people have come back to get, CPR or whatever. I was just very, very blessed that I have my little cheerleading squad on the other side that still loves me. So I feel very blessed. Not in a hurry to get there, but I'm very glad to know for sure there's a continuation of existence.
Beautiful message. Thank you so much, Laura. This has been a blessing and an honor for me. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you I feel privileged to be on your show.
Thank you for being here. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being here and supporting my channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing if you enjoy near-death experiences and other spiritually transformative stories. It helps the algorithm know that this information is useful and push it out to more people. And that's the goal, to get as many people to know that we are eternal spiritual beings and that we never die. Our bodies might die, but our essence will never die. And I want people to live with less fear. Let's all spread the word. Like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that little notification bell so you get all the notifications when my videos post. Thank you for all of your support. I'm sending love to you.